Hey, so for those who don't know me, I'm Michelle. Um, this is predominantly a study hall slash tips and tricks video for social psychology with Dr. Bastin. Um, if you are here because you need help understanding how to study well for his type of class, this is the video for you. So he's essentially established a premise. He's used to teaching graduate level students, and I think he's trying his best to modify and adapt. But if you're interested in getting a master's or a doctorate, this is a really good soft intro. Soft is not the right term. Um, kind of an foreshadowing to what it's going to be like. The premise is that you are largely responsible for self-directing in how you get the information. So, unlike a lot of the classes that you've taken in undergrad, the first couple of years, this class is intended for you to read as much as possible of the material and assess for yourself what you think are critical lessons in each chapter, in each section, and come to class having already done that work. And then everything that is taught in class or discussed in class is to help you understand deeper what you've already read. So I know he doesn't get through all of the material in class, but I feel like the way he's set it up and the questions that he asks on the quiz are so heavily book influenced that if you study the book like it is your social psychology Bible, then you will be better off than the average student and easily get A's or B's on the subsequent quizzes or exams. So I'm going to dive into it and some of the tips and tricks that I've learned and been taught by friends who have gone through master's programs and doctorate programs, and just from experience with these types of teachers in what works best for you to learn the material and retain it best. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is schedule. You need to schedule the time out to study it, at least an hour a day. I'd prefer an hour myself. Sometimes I have less, sometimes I have to make that up on the weekends. I get it. Everybody's schedule is different. Everybody's life is their own mess. But if you can just sit with the text for an hour and really give it your full attention, then you're going to be 10 times better off than anybody else. I've mentioned before, I don't know if everybody heard it or not, but the average person takes about 30 minutes to an hour to get through about 10 pages. And each chapter has about 40 pages in it. So it is not infeasible or unfeasible. I don't know which one it is. It's not infeasible to be able to get through the material within a week if you just sit with it. Not everybody can do that all in one stretch. I know my brain, I need breaks. So even when I am doing my studying, I force myself to take a 5-minute break after every 30 minutes. I forget where I saw it. It's a video. I'll probably link it later in the group me, where a researcher showed that your ability to focus and retain information while you're learning diminishes after 30 minutes. And if you can just relax and reward your brain for having focused for 30 minutes, it can maintain that highest optimal level of focus. But yeah, moral of the story, study for about an hour each day and you will remember quite a bit more. I say about an hour because it takes me 30 minutes. When I'm taking notes while I'm reading, it takes me an hour. It slows me down because I'm not just powering through what I'm reading. I'm also trying to assess what are they trying to say in this specific paragraph, what is the key points, what do I think is really important, and then I will go back after I've read it and highlight maybe a sentence, maximum 2 per paragraph. There are some paragraphs I don't highlight anything at all, but then after I highlight what is important, I then go into my Word document and type up my notes for that section. Everybody's different. I have a hard time remembering what I thought was important later. So for the interest of time and not having to reread that section again to find what it was that I thought was important, even when I highlight, it's a little out of context at that point if I come back to it later and try to do the notes later. I like to do it as I do it. I like to do it as I read it. It makes it more streamlined for me, but everybody's different. So I get it if you work better in a different way. But that works for me. That might be something you want to try. But like I said, it does slow me down. So a 10-page section that would take me 30 minutes normally to just power through and read will take me an hour if I'm taking notes while I'm doing it. But the end result is that I then have usable notes afterwards and key things highlighted, which can help when it's time to review for the quizzes. The other thing is get used to making your own notes. I know that everybody noticed he puts all of his lecture notes up onto Canvas. Unfortunately, he only does that at the beginning of the week or right before he's about to start a chapter. So on off weeks like this week, where we quizzed for chapters 4 and 5 before starting 5, we did not have those lecture notes to study for the quiz. So if you are not making your own notes to revise for the quiz, you are at a significant disadvantage on those weeks. The other thing is, I'm pretty sure that he got the template, every slide from Cengage, and just added his notes at the bottom of what he thought was important or not per slide. And if you go through it while you're reading, you'll notice almost every single slide is virtually verbatim from those key critical points in each paragraph. So you can make that yourself, honestly, if you take consistent notes while you're going through the book. It's good for someone who has read it already. As he goes through the material, it reminds you of questions that you thought of while you were reading that didn't quite make sense to you. And so it leaves you better prepared for asking those questions that, this doesn't make sense. What is the difference between these two terms? Or why are they harping on this? Or do you think this study is more important than this one? We've all noticed that he tends to have those studies that he pulls from for questions. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. The other thing is, at the end of every chapter, they have these top 10 key points. Normally, in other classes, you can skip right on over that. Not so with this one. There are some questions that he has used that are almost verbatim off of these. So even if you're not going to memorize them, which I don't think you should, I think you should at least read them. And the last thing is make flashcards with the key terms. I say that because I really remember the text after reading it because of all the highlighting in the notes, note taking, but I don't always remember the key terms verbatim afterwards. So if you are like me, flashcards can be, or of key terms can be really, really helpful for that. I have already studied chapter 5, but I think I'm going to go through like just a section for you to see what it might be like. That way, if you want to go through chapter 5 and take notes so that you're better prepared for the exam that's going to cover it, then you kind of have a step-by-step how to get through it. And then I'm going to move on to chapter 6 because I know that we have a quiz on that in a week. So I want to be prepared for that. So I'm going to start reading chapter 6 tonight as part of my homework. Okay, so yeah, so we'll just go through chapter 5 like we haven't quizzed on chapter 5 yet. So the first thing that I would do in my notes is title a header of chapter 5, stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. And then on this front page, it's got all of the headers on it. I would also type those in and then just fill in using bullet points or whatever as I go along so that it's super quick. So I set that up and then I start reading, and as I find things that I think are important, I highlight it and type it in after I get to the end of a section. So the first thing I would do in chapter 5 is kind of read this intro, not because I think there might, I say that, and then we're going to get a question off of it. Not that I think that he pulls questions for the quiz off of this section, but because he's pulling from such a large bank of questions, you never know. And considering after class today, I might be eating my words because the very first thing that the introduction to chapter 5 says is the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice, which is the direct quote of Martin Luther King Jr. that he started off the class with, and that he discussed that Barack Obama had embroidered into one of the carpets in the Oval Office while he was president. So that would be something, even if I hadn't already been to class and knew that he had made a point of bringing that up, I would highlight that because it's a really good quote. And it leads into this idea of stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. So I would highlight that. And then continue reading. It's popularized for inspirational to Barack Obama when he served as president in that Oval Office. Within also the recognition of what is slow, inconsistent, and sometimes tragic mark and has been towards our brighter future. I don't really have anything else that I want to highlight in that paragraph. Sorry, I read slower when I read out loud, but I will try to make this more educational. Okay, so the next paragraph says that Obama was elected president was a remarkable milestone in itself. When his African-American father was a young man, he would not have been served in many restaurants in the nation's capital. That his father's son would become the nation's president. Maybe I read that incorrectly. Oh well. I'll reread it again later. That amount of progress in a person's lifetime is staggering. Furthering this momentum, in 2019, a record number of women and people of color began their terms in the U.S. Congress. In recent years, women have fueled movements to spark a profound change in discussions and norms concerning sexual harassment, coercion, and assault. Attitudes towards interracial and same-sex marriages have become much more positive within the past decade or two, and when an act of prejudice or bias is made public today, more people than ever rush to support the target and denounce the perpetrator. I'm going to highlight that sentence, the second to last one. The attitudes towards interracial and same-sex marriages have become much more positive within the past decade or two. I know this sounds like hindsight bias because he already kind of discussed this in class, but because I think this is a better indicator of what he was trying to say in class about how attitudes have changed, because it felt like the way he was reading the slides at the beginning of class today, that he was saying racism is better and prejudice is better, but then he went on to discuss how it's not better. And so I like this sentence. The attitudes towards interracial and same-sex marriages have become much more positive within the past decade or two, because it highlights the fact that we're talking about attitudes about systemic prejudice over decades, over virtually a century of time, as opposed to just in the past, past couple of years, and more importantly, that it's not better. The implication of better is that it is tolerable, and it just chafed with me. I know that that's not exactly the way he put it, but that's the impression I got, and I think this sentence gives a better impression of what the chapter is trying to say, that it's not better, but that those attitudes have improved over lengthy periods of time, and that, yeah, I think that's probably a good sentence. That or the sentence after it. I don't think anything else has to really be highlighted in there. But this is, like I said, the introduction to the chapter. Usually I don't highlight very much from the entire thing. There's only, 6 paragraphs in the introduction. Most introductions I make maybe 1 or 2 at the most, highlights through it, and then there are some that there are a lot of key terms, so you never know. But yeah, keep that in mind. Read the paragraph, and after reading it, after taking in the entire idea that they were trying to get across within those 3, 4, 5 sentences, then highlight what you feel like is the most important part of it. And if you feel like this is a paragraph that is going to make the next paragraph sound, if it's leading into the next paragraph, then you may not have to highlight anything in it at all. The name of the game isn't to highlight the entire book. The name of the game is to find what the critical points that the writers are trying to make. And that is it. That's all it takes to do well in this class. Just read it, and read it like you are trying to understand it. Read it like if you had serious issues with someone in your family or one of your friends, and shit was going down, pardon my language, and you needed to find some sort of resolution. I do not get this problem. And someone handed you this book, and it's meant to solve all your problems. Yeah, I would read it like that, because it's critical, and I don't want anybody to fail. And because social psychology is so integral a part of so many other branches of psychology that if you are interested in doing any kind of research or fields of psychology that have to do with interpersonal relationships, then you're going to need a strong foundation in psychology. And I don't want anyone walking away from this class going, I didn't really learn much. I barely made it through and I hated it. No one wants to start their career hating the foundation of what they're going to do. And I don't want to deter people away from all of the wonderful branches that are in psychology, social psychology. So try to just read, and try to read it like it's important. I know that's not the answer that a lot of people want to hear, and I know that people want to really just find the things that are going to make it super easy, but honestly, reading it is the easiest way to go through this class. If you don't want to make the flashcards, if you don't want to highlight, if you don't want to take notes, you don't have to, but it makes you more dependent on your reading comprehension and your ability to grasp the material that you're reading. So good luck. I'm going to go study on chapter 6. I think I'll make a video where I'm just going through that so that if anyone wants to study with me, they're welcome to, but I thought I'd make this introductory video so that you kind of get a feel for what you might need. And if you don't need to study with somebody else, you don't have to. And that way you weren't watching an hour-long video from effectively nothing if that's not what you're looking for. Okay, good luck everybody.